Hey, this is Nate Wells.
And this is Drew Cove.
Check out our podcast, that Go for Hockey podcast, for the latest news and updates on University of Minnesota hockey. You can find us on iTunes, and we're also on the Zone Coverage Podcast Network.
That's elite.
The Zone Coverage Podcast Network.
They may be drinkers, Robin, but they're also human beings.
Hell yeah, let's get Stinko.
Giles and the Goalie Podcast, back in the Cupboard Under the Stairs studio once again. I am your host, Giles Farrell. Find me on Twitter at Giles Farrell. Across from me is Ben Remington.
Hello.
Find him on Twitter at Ben Remington. You can find us over at Zone Coverage. This is a lovely Zone Coverage Podcast Network production here today. I don't know where I was going with this.
I don't know. You kind of lost your train of thought there.
Yeah, it hit a wall.
Don't you have a script for that?
I probably should write out some kind of a script, but I don't know. I just hit a wall. Not like a, United States-Mexico wall, but brick wall or something.
Wow. I didn't know we were getting political on this podcast. Jesus Christ.
I felt like I could just
too early on a Sunday for this, Giles.
Yeah, roles are reversed. You're the one who's recording in the morning after a night of maybe over drinking fine beverages. And
yeah.
I'm alert and well after just staying in on a Saturday night and
this
doing
is weird.
One thing. So what a time to be alive.
We tore some kind of rift in the space-time, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, one of those Star Trek things. The space-time continuum has been upset, and now here we are, roles reversed. But anyway, I suppose we can just go right into it.
Yeah.
Did I really want to? But the Minnesota Wild were back at it again here in the last week, as always. And there was a little bit of news to go over, or we have some topical things to discuss. Mm-hmm. But very quickly to recap their week that they had, they played the Pittsburgh Penguins on New Year's Eve. That was Monday.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm sorry.
That was Monday.
That was Monday, yes. My week was really thrown off by having New Year's Day off. So it was a Monday and then the day off and then another Monday, essentially.
Oh, yeah.
It was a rough week. Anyway, they lose 3-2 to the Penguins at XL Energy Center. Not the best game as Sidney Crosby and Phil Kessel and company had their way with the Wild for a good half of the hockey game. But the Wild then have January 1st off, which we're coming back to January 1st.
We'll get back to that, yeah.
Coming back to that. And then they do not play until the 3rd, which was Thursday. Then they had a 1 p.m. local time start against the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Oh, yeah.
At the Toronto Maple Leafs. Mm-hmm. Kids Day.
Sure.
Don't understand that, but all right, that's typically a minor league production. But anyway, the Wild, after falling behind 2-0 in the first period, they battle back. They win 4-3 in Toronto against the high-powered Maple Leafs. Mm-hmm. This was after the Maple Leafs had put both of their goaltenders on injured reserve prior to the hockey game. So they had Michael Hutchinson in goal opposite Devin Dubnyk. Mm-hmm. And the Wild actually did a pretty good job of peppering a not good goaltender who got called upon to start an emergency situation. I was actually pleasantly surprised because typically they just kind of, we might get a shot or two on goal here.
Do you think maybe it was because he's the third goaltender and usually they completely buckle when they face backup goaltenders? Like, they just wear out. I feel like, maybe this can't be proven, but I feel like they wear out good goaltenders sometimes. Like, they make Pekka Rinne look bad often. And then, as we have noted many, many times, they can't possibly score any goals against backups that are terrible. But then you bring in the third goaltender in an emergency situation, and they'd score 4 goals against them and win. So maybe there's something to that. Man, I don't know. Seems like maybe there's the stigma of the backup goaltender doesn't apply when it's the third goaltender, I guess.
No, they've made some third goaltenders look angelic as well. Let's not get over that. And then to close out the week, but only puts them halfway through their Eastern road trip, the Wild had another matinee game on Saturday afternoon, which, as I've said many times before, is a godsend. Afternoon Saturday games are wonderful. Mm-hmm. The Wild win 4-3 in the Canadian capital at Canadian Tire Center against the Ottawa Senators, sponsored by Uber.
Canadian Tire Fire Center.
Jared Spurgeon with a pair of goals. Jordan Greenway gets on the score sheet, and Zach Parise had 3 points for the Minnesota Wild in their win. The Wild hang on after a Mark Stone goal late in the third, but very good performance from them after they did not have a good first period.
No.
It was a very slow start, and Anders Nielsen, who was just acquired in the last week by Ottawa, looking very good.
Yeah, he had a good game
by the Wild because they didn't really try to put any pucks on the net.
Yeah. No, it was a brutal first period. I actually missed most of it, luckily, but Dubnyk kind of stood on his head a little bit for the first period there. He kind of had to keep the team in the game. And, that second period, though, oh, my God. You saw Ottawa's defense on grand display in that second period because they were terrible. They could not stop the Wild to save their lives. And, the Wild, luckily, I believe it was 3 goals in the second period. And it just, the floodgates had opened at that point. So it's the Senators, and so kind of taking a step back and looking at it more broad brush, they win 2 out of 3 games in a week, which I don't know, when was the last time that happened? Before Thanksgiving, probably?
Yeah, it's probably been a while.
Yeah, I think it's so, but I don't know. One of them was the Senators, and it's not like they played a full 60 minutes against them. I will say the loss against Pittsburgh, I was more encouraged than discouraged about that loss because I thought they played pretty well for most of that game, but it was really some fluky bounces that ended up doing them in. There was a couple of weird plays that they ended up scoring on, and Sidney Crosby, of course, gets the easiest goal in his career, but beyond that, I thought that they played pretty well. Just a very few couple of mistakes that, of course, the Penguins are going to capitalize on because they're the Penguins. So, I don't know. I think that we're out of the swoon. I think that we can safely say that now. It's just a matter of, can this team start winning enough games in bunches to get back into the playoff race?
Yeah, maybe. It's possible.
Very concise answer, Giles. Thank you.
Don't hold your breath. That's where I'm at.
No, I'm with you on that, and I think that as long as they don't have Matt Dumba, it's finding consistent offense is probably going to be difficult. But they seem to have turned a corner. Devin Dubnyk especially seems to have turned a corner. I think he's played great the last week or so. There's been a couple of really.
I disagree. I watched. Especially in the Toronto game, I watched very closely. I'll give the Ottawa game there's a couple of goals that are, not entirely his fault. But anyway, that Toronto game, after the Maple Leafs went down, or Maple Leafs went up 2-0, you watch him very closely. If on a couple of chances the Maple Leafs had, if they hit the net, the Maple Leafs score. He was not seeing the puck. He was still kind of off his angle. The Wild got very lucky in that game is what I came away with. And I didn't get to do a recap because it was an afternoon game, so I have to work like normal people. But because there was so much luck involved in winning against Toronto, and most of it was because the Maple Leafs couldn't put a third goal on the Wild, whether it was at 2-0 or 2-1 in the first period, because they couldn't hit a net because Dubnyk was so far off position or in no man's land. I'm not entirely convinced he's out of the woods, but it's a lot better than, his 857 save percentage area.
Yeah. I think he's a totally different goalie than that late November, really kind of the crater that he hit in late November. So I don't know. It just seems like he's got a little bit better. I don't think he's up to that 940 save percentage stratosphere that we've seen him do in an extended month period like we've seen before. But he's certainly, I think, turning a corner, hopefully towards that. You'd like to see him. I mean, how nice would it be if he reeled off that kind of numbers in the month of January when it's all said and done, and the Wild can get, you know, a bunch of wins kind of strung together here in January and get kind of back into things. That's the hope. I mean, who knows what'll happen at the end of the day.
Speaking of craters, going back to January 1st.
Yeah.
Just a large crater that I get so worked up about because everybody else gets so worked up about. But January 1st was the NHL's Winter Classic. This year was held between Boston Bruins, Chicago Blackhawks at historic Notre Dame Stadium on the campus of the University of Notre Dame. The only thing that's worthwhile visiting in the city of South Bend, let me tell you from experience, there's campus in Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Okay.
If you're looking for a boring experience,
what were you
check
doing
out
in South Bend?
This was years ago. We were taking a road trip to visit family in Cleveland. So we stopped in South Bend for the evening because I think it's like a 14 or 15 hour otherwise drive to Cleveland straight through. So that's a lot. So we're like, oh, we can stop in South Bend. That seems like a pleasant city. Narrator, it was not.
Yeah, I could see that. And what got me, and we didn't really even touch on this talking about the Winter Classic, but like, as far as hockey fans go, who gives a crap about Notre Dame? Like, it doesn't, like, even as far as college.
NBC.
Well, yeah, no, you're not kidding there, because NBC has their football rights, so I'm sure they thought, well, everybody loves Notre Dame. We have their football rights. I'm a college football fan, and I don't give a crap about Notre Dame. You know, it was kind of weird for them to force that. Like, oh, this is so historic and prestigious, and like, well, they played on college football fields before. They played at the Big House in Michigan. Like, you know, that
was cool.
Yeah, that's something like, oh, hey, they actually have a hockey team like related to that. You know, instead of in the middle of bum F Indiana, you've got the Blackhawks playing yet again against another Original Six team. Like, it's just, yeah, we talked about it last week and how much we didn't really care, and I still scratch my head. You know, it's like, who cares about Notre Dame? Who cares? Like, it just, you know, they got waxed off the field on Saturday in the actual football game, and then you're playing at their you know, stadium on Tuesday. Like, it's this huge deal. Like, Notre Dame football is what Alabama football actually is.
Yeah, actually, the second intermission, because we saw the first intermission act was Weezer. What you didn't see during the second intermission when the NHL was announcing their outdoor games for next season was that during the second intermission, it was actually just a 17-minute moment of silence for the University of Notre Dame football team that got put to rest
by Clemson
last weekend.
Absolutely embarrassed.
Speaking of 2020 outdoor games, this is where I have an axe to grind because I'm watching the game because I really didn't care for anything else that was on television at that time. So I'm watching the game, and it was actually a pretty decent hockey game. I'm not going to lie.
Sure. Yeah, I'm sure it was.
You know, between middling team Boston and garbage team Chicago, uniforms were very nice on the guys, as we've discussed.
Well, that was a good matchup.
My axe to grind is that the NHL awarded the 2020 Winter Classic to the Cotton Bowl in Dallas. And we didn't really hit on this last week because it was just kind of reported at the time. It wasn't official, but during the second intermission, the NHL officially revealed their outdoor schedule for 2019-2020 season with the gold star being that Dallas was hosting the outdoor game in 2020. The amount of rage and vitriol from Minnesota hockey fans on social media was ridiculous.
Yeah.
And the only time this is cared for is on January 1st.
Yep.
January 2nd through December 31st, nobody gives a flying bleep about
nobody at
the
all.
Winter Classic. It's becoming a tradition unlike any other on January 1st for Minnesotans to turn on the Winter Classic, go, oh, the Wild aren't on. Why is this? I am angry. And then the next day, we're just carrying on like normal.
Right. You
Nobody
got
cares.
hangovers, the Rose Bowl, complaining about the Winter Classic. Yeah, that's the January 1st traditions.
So this is where I draw a line because, and then it started to kind of filter its way through local
Yeah.
news-y personalities. I don't know.
Well,
how to
let's
say
not
that.
give them
radio,
that much credit.
Radio
Yeah.
personalities.
Let's just say radio guys.
So, I it's tough because I want to preface this by saying I would love the Winter Classic to be in Minnesota at
Sure.
one point.
Sure, why not?
I am not against hosting it. I would want to host it. I would want to go to that because it's a very cool event. But it's not coming to Minnesota anytime soon.
No.
And I was so fired up about this, I wrote an article on zonecoverage.com. Mm-hmm. And basically I outlined why. First of which is the Wild did have an outdoor game already.
Yeah.
They had that in 2016 in the Stadium Series, which they hosted at the University of Minnesota campus. And lest we forget, the Wild could have picked, say, Dallas, a team that would have meant something to the local people here. But the team chose the Chicago Blackhawks for whatever reason.
Butts in the seats.
And then also, lest we forget, the NHL kicked back 4,000 tickets the week going into that game. So it was technically not a sellout. One of the few outdoor games that have not sold out.
Right.
So whether you like that fact or not, the NHL probably remembers that outdoor game here was not a sellout.
Right. And so the NHL kicked him back the week of. That's not very common, right? Like, I don't think
No.
that's happened very often.
And it probably had more to do with the fact that there was probably just a lack of interest because
Yeah.
remember at the time the Blackhawks were still all right,
Yeah.
but the Wild were struggling, and that outdoor game was John Torchetti's first home
Yeah,
game
it
as
was.
interim Wild head coach.
It was,
So
yeah.
the Wild were so bad at that time, they fired their coach. So that doesn't exactly, create a lot of buzz.
No. Well, and I got to think, and so the reason for the NHL kicking back those tickets, I don't know if we ever got an official word on that, but I'm sure they do a lot of promotional stuff where they give away those tickets, and that's where those tickets came from. And so, it'd be cool to send people to Stadium Series games all over the country, blah, blah, blah. But the problem is, and same thing with the Winter Classic, nobody wants to come here. It's too cold. Like, they don't want to, nobody from anywhere outside of, especially south of the Mason-Dixon line, nobody wants to come up here during that time of year. Like, that's just, it's not, a very hospitable environment for someone. So I'm sure the NHL had a bunch of tickets left over.
The NFL did last year for the
What?
Super Bowl. They came up here. They braved the elements.
No, I know. But like, yeah, that's what.
I'm just being a smart ass.
Yeah, okay. I was going to say, the NFL had to because we built a new stadium, and that was kind of like, quote unquote, the deal, which is why they're never coming back because we're not going to build a new stadium anytime soon.
So the other points that I fired in this article about why the Winter Classic isn't coming to Minnesota anytime soon is that the Wild, while they kill ratings locally, they do not do good ratings nationally when they are on NBCSN. Their ratings are not good because there's no interest in the Wild. That's because right now they're stale product.
Yeah.
You remember at the beginning of the year, how many of the national pundits said the Wild are likely to be one of the teams who were in the playoffs last year to miss playoffs this year?
Oh, almost
there were
all
a
of them.
lot.
Almost all of them.
And right now they're proving them all right because they're a middling product.
Yeah.
And then you take that into effect, and national sponsors who want to give the NHL money for this prestigious outdoor event, they are not going to want to give them money if you put a stale product like Minnesota who goes on and doesn't bring any viewers.
Right.
You're not doing them any favors. And that was the big part. And as I put in there, money talks, folks.
Yeah.
Like, that is probably a huge reason why. And then the third part of that is, as I alluded to, is the Wild roster is stale. They don't have an actual star.
No.
Sorry if you're a huge Zach Parise or Ryan Suter fan who thinks they are superstars. Yeah.
They're not even all-stars.
Maybe 5 years ago. Ooh, we're coming back to that. Maybe 5 years ago, they were probably closer to that. But now they're just, you see that there's a tier of superstar, which is, top tier in the league.
Right.
And then they're probably right in the tier below that, but they're kind of maybe Suter a little bit more, kind of lowering down, maybe getting closer to that next tier, unless he can turn around. But you don't have any stars. And unless you have star players you can promote, which we've said before, NHL doesn't do a good job of promoting anyway.
Right.
Why would they give you this marquee event? And then the other thing that I really threw in at the end here was that Dallas is hosting the 2020 Winter Classic, which, makes everyone mad anyway because everyone has this pent-up rage against Dallas, and it's for good reason.
The South Stars, yeah.
I don't like them either, but they get to host the Winter Classic. What logical reasoning would they ever have to put Minnesota as the opponent? I don't see it. I don't get it. It makes sense here to the local people to put Minnesota as the opponent, but to the people at Dallas who are hosting this game, there's no tie to Minnesota. It's like, you used to have this team, but you don't anymore. That's the tie, and there is no tie. You can put somebody from the South or somebody like Nashville or Tampa Bay or somebody that's good and that's going to kick in the ratings. I, for one, hope it's Nashville, but we don't know. The opponent is undetermined. So if you're thinking the logical choice is Minnesota, no, you're wrong. Dallas has no ties whatsoever to host the Wild in that game. And they've only had one previous playoff history, and the series was so short, there's really no rivalry there. Right. So, I'm sorry, I hate to burst your bubble, but the Winter Classic will not involve the Wild for a foreseeable future, and you can just get used to it. That's what you need to do at this point. So instead of getting all worked up on January 1st, just sit down, shut up, and enjoy the hockey game.
Right. No, that's fair. I don't know. And also, something that was brought up too on that day is
I got so worked up I drank out of the wrong end of my coffee.
It's not that big of a market here. And Dallas, part of the reason that Dallas probably got the game, not because the Stars are such an awesome hockey team, because we all know that they're bleeping horse bleep, as said by their CEO last week.
We should adopt the title. We should just be, we are the bleeping horse bleep of Wild podcasts.
But at the end of the day, Dallas-Fort Worth, that North Texas Metroplex, it's like a top 5 market in the country.
Market.
It's so, roughly twice the population of the Twin Cities. I think they're around the 5-6 million mark. We're around 3 million or so in the actual condensed metro area. So that comes into a huge play too. I mean, if you look at it, they're not playing these games in medium-sized markets like the Twin Cities. They're going to Boston. They're going to New York. I mean, there is some exceptions, and they play in Michigan. Detroit's not I don't even know if Detroit's a city anymore, but that's a historic Original Six team. They'll make exceptions for that. They're not going to make an exception for the Wild. I mean, aside from the non-plural name and the Christmas colors, nobody cares. That's not something that anybody nationally cares about. Like you said, they're not a draw on NBCSN. Why would they bother putting them on their marquee event for the year, especially in a market that isn't that big and a team that isn't that good? It just doesn't. So I don't know. People get worked up about it like it's some kind of super prestigious thing to be in the Winter Classic, and then they make fun of the fact that the Blackhawks are in it every year. And it's just well, that kind of cancels out. That's how not prestigious it is.
People who all the time, they're complaining that the Wild aren't the Winter Classic, but on the other hand, they are bitching and moaning about how the Wild need to tear it down and rebuild. If you're saying they need to tear it down and rebuild, that probably answers your question of why they aren't in the GD Winter Classic.
Yeah. And I do really hope it is Nashville, because I think that would be good to give PK Subban that kind of audience to,
Nashville needs to host, period.
That would be interesting. I think they could probably pull that off. Doing an outdoor game in Nashville, it'd be dicey, but they could probably pull it off.
They have to put it in the football stadium, but there's probably a logistical problem. Because
and I've heard that football stadium is just garbage.
The Titans are actually a semi-decent football team, so they might interfere with playoffs. Yeah, which is probably why the Dallas game was put in the Cotton Bowl, not in say Cowboy Stadium.
Well, that it's outdoor. And Cowboy Stadium is indoors, so I don't know.
Come on, they can open up the roof so God can watch the Cowboys.
So God can watch the Winter Classic. Well, I mean, Touchdown Jesus watched the Winter Classic on Tuesday, so I guess that's only fair.
Watch out, Patrick King. Jesus is watching.
Like he cares. But I'm with you on all that. I don't know. It'd be interesting to. When the Wild are going to be involved in another outdoor game, but maybe they'll get another Stadium Series game in the next handful of years.
Oh, I missed the point.
I don't know.
The other point I kind of made was there's no venues here besides
TCF, but that's it.
That's it.
Yeah, that's really it.
I don't think Target Field is going to host a game.
Allianz Stadium.
That's
it's a little small.
Too small.
Yeah, but then they wanted to worry about not selling out.
I'd be okay though.
it only fits. It fits the same as the XL. So hey,
there you go.
You don't have to worry about missing tickets on that one.
I went by there on the way here. It looks so nice, but no, they won't put it there. And the Vikings stadium is indoors, so
yeah.
The only feasible option is TCF Bank Stadium. If they already done it there, like. Heinz Field is the only venue that's hosted an outdoor game twice. So and we're not Pittsburgh, folks.
We're not the Penguins who are on a 12 season playoff streak or something like that.
Yeah, I mean the Wild are halfway there.
They are.
That's still good. That's still good.
Yeah, it's better than nothing.
Yeah. Speaking of better than nothing, Wild backup goaltender Alex Stalock was in the news this last week. I'm really killing it with the transitions.
That was an awesome transition.
I'm just getting so better. I can't wait till our next iTunes review is the bleeping host needs to stop patting himself on the back for his transitions.
Transitions are hard, all right?
Yeah.
When we pull them off in a good way, you got to celebrate it.
And I wrote about it early in the week was that Michael Russo, The Athletic, on his last podcast, and then kind of one of his notebook pieces on The Athletic, speculated that, Alex Stalock could be getting an extension sometime soon. And this was the first rage-induced thing I wrote on New Year's Day.
Yes, you did.
You, me, and our friend Tony from The Athletic were kind of all discussing this, and I got so worked up about it. I was like, I have to write now. So I wrote 2 rage-inducing things on New Year's Day. But anyway, the speculation from Russo, I know that just doesn't come from anywhere.
No.
He hears that.
Yes.
He doesn't just throw bleep at the wall.
No.
If he puts that into writing, then he's heard it from more than a couple of people that this is something you probably
or at least one
soon.
person,
right?
Incredibly credible.
Which I'm not disputing. So my crux of this article was why?
Yeah.
Because I went down the line, I looked at the stats, and you watch Alex Stalock play, and there's nothing that says contract extension about him here. At the very best, Alex Stalock is an average backup goaltender, and the stats point that out. I said at the very best.
You're right. At the very best, that's what he would be.
And then you see the market for what backup goaltenders could be in free agency this year, and it's like, what's the hurry?
Yeah.
Why are you in a hurry to sign, probably a below average backup goaltender?
Yeah.
What's the hurry? I don't get it. Sure, everybody probably loves Alex Stalock in the room, and I get it. You need those clubhouse guys, but you also need a goaltender you can throw in there to supplement Devin Dubnyk. Give him more than a day off. Because Alex Stalock really in his time has never gotten more than one consecutive start, and that's always been a back-to-back situation. What's the hurry? And I put this at the end of the article. If you're Paul Fenton, your backup goaltender problem is the least of your concerns because at that time, the Wild couldn't score more than 1 goal per game.
Yeah. I don't get it either. I Stalock and I've always been kind of critical of Stalock because not anything against him. I just, like you said, I think he's a below average backup goalie. And that's fine for having him. I mean, you're saving $1. He doesn't have a huge contract like some backups do. Not that a lot of backups have huge contracts, but he's a relatively cheap backup goalie, and you kind of getting what you're paying for. What's the rush to re-sign him? For some reason, in the NHL, the economics of goaltending works out as if you're like a tabbed as a backup goaltender, you get like a 1 or 2 year deal for under $3 million, which isn't a ton, in the NHL. And there's a ton of those guys. To your point, there's, 5 to 10 of those guys every single summer. And you could go out and sign one of them and, maybe get a backup who's on the better end of things, maybe a more of a backup who can start closer to 20 games a season or 15, 20 games a season. I don't understand why the rush to extend Stalock. Are they doing it so they can save money at that position? Because that seems to me to be the only reason why they would do it. Is if you're going to sign him for less than $1 million a season, which is I think all that he's making now. I think he's making like $800 right now or $900, something like that. And it's just like, are you just looking to save money in the long term? Because you could go out and get literally a better backup goaltender for not much more, for $1 million more than you're paying him next summer, without any issue at all. Like, it wouldn't be like they're kind of plentiful if you really want one. And I don't understand why you would need to extend him during the season if you are going out of your way to keep him around when he's below average. I don't get it.
His cap hit is $650,000.
So even less than 800. Yeah. They're just cheaping out. And there's something to be said for cap flexibility, and that's nice, but you really need to do that on. I feel like backup goalie is a semi-important position. Like especially if Dubnyk can't really right the ship from his struggles in the last month, and then what? Or God forbid he gets hurt. He hasn't been hurt for he's been hurt for what? He was hurt for 2 weeks last year, and that's it. His entire time with the Wild, he's been healthy, except for 2 weeks last December.
And I put this in there, some names who could, be better options at backup next year to give Dubnyk more days off, because as we have seen this year, he probably could be benefiting from, 2-3 games off in a row.
Right.
But some names include like Robin Lehner, Curtis McElhinney, Brian Elliott, Jimmy Howard. And then I also put Casey DeSmith of Pittsburgh, who we saw, and Mikko Koskinen of Edmonton, but I put those are probably less likely to hit the market because they've been so crucial to their team's success this year, because Matt Murray's been out for Pittsburgh and Cam Talbot has taken a dump down his leg.
Yeah.
So
he's Harry Potter wizarded himself. It's a deep cut.
That's wow. All right. But I don't get the rush. I don't. The last point I made was pretty much the crux of it is, what's your hurry? Like, there's other problems on this team you need to fix, and you can fix the backup goaltender position by the free agent market next. Like, it is okay to maybe invest a little bit more in a backup goaltender. You want to see Devin Dubnyk a little bit more sharp? Well, then let's spend a few extra bucks on a backup goaltender who can maybe give him 27 nights off in a year.
Right, or push him.
Right.
That's the big thing. Devin Dubnyk has never had any kind of semblance of competition here.
He's never been pushed here.
Right, and we've talked a lot about Devin Dubnyk's inconsistency, and I think that's something that's never even been explored. It's like, well, what if you bring in someone else who could play 30 games a season rather than the 15 that you're giving the backup currently? Why not? Like, why not have that kind of, maybe Capo Käkkinen's that guy down the road. I don't know. But why not try to bring someone else in to be like, hey, when Dubnyk's struggling, when he has those months where suddenly he can't hit 900 save percentage, we can start this guy for 10 games and it's not going to kill us. I don't understand that. Like, why wouldn't you want to push him, especially when he's giving you such inconsistent results?
Yeah. No, and It's fascinating, but luckily we haven't seen that contract extension come yet. So maybe Puffin
it'll happen tomorrow morning after
is
the
a
podcast
subscriber
released.
to zonecoverage.com. And you can be too, zonecoverage.com/subscribe. Use a promo code GATG20.
Does that still work after the new year?
Should be.
Oh, nice.
I
Good.
don't think it expires.
Okay. I don't know if it was a holiday thing. Or
No. It just...
we talked about stocking stuffers. So
well, right. And we wanted to put that in there for,
now you can put it in your Easter basket.
right. Valentine's Day.
Yeah, there you go.
It's a good Valentine's Day gift.
Ladies love it.
Yeah.
That was bad.
Anyway, moving along, the topic we had was Devin Dubnyk.
Oh.
Speaking of, he was selected late this week to the All-Star game. He was named the Minnesota Wild representative to the 2019 NHL All-Star game in San Jose, as he was named one of the 2 goaltenders to the Central Division roster. And I could not have been more thoroughly confused when that was announced.
Right?
It made no sense. And this podcast is pretty much just going to be makes no sense. But Devin Dubnyk was far down the pecking order of players who I thought were going to get selected on the Wild to the All-Star game. And there has to be a Wild representative on the All-Star. There has to be a player from each team on your roster to make the game. So, we can probably sit here and agree at some point that you probably should just dump that rule altogether, considering the snubs that exist for each team. But man, Devin Dubnyk making the All-Star roster was just confounding, and it pretty much sounded like Matt Dumba was going to make the roster had he not gotten injured. So we can all send some thank you cards to Matthew Tkachuk for that. And the probably second most prominent name after Matt Dumba should have been Zach Parise.
Yeah.
But it wasn't. And somehow Devin Dubnyk squeaked in to the roster here, and he was named as one of the 2 goaltenders I said, along with Pekka Rinne and Nashville. And how does Ben Bishop get missed?
I know.
How does
That's what I was going to say.
Connor Hellebuck get missed?
Yeah.
I noted this the last time the Wild and Stars plays, but Ben Bishop has been a godsend for the Dallas Stars
This
year.
season, yeah. Last year he didn't have a great season, and we all thought he was kind of winding down after his Tampa days. But
how does Ben Bishop not make the All-Star? And it comes back to that garbage. Every team has to have a player on the roster.
That's just it. So I'm looking at the rosters right now, and if you send Ben Bishop to the game, it's pretty easy to pull out Miro Heiskanen and put in Ryan Suter. And maybe that's what their plan was with Matt Dumba. Maybe it was
Heiskanen
a Dumba for. I mean, I know Heiskanen. Probably. I don't know if he's having a better season than Suter, but I just think that would have been a really easy thing to do, and people would have been a lot less upset about Heiskanen missing out on the All-Star game than Devin Dubnyk being in, I feel like, and Ryan Suter being there, because Ryan Suter's been an All-Star how many years now? I mean, he's almost an All-Star every year. And he's just kind of, he's got that respect around the league. He doesn't put up necessarily a ton of points. Last year he did, but he's got that respect as such a solid defenseman. I don't understand why they needed to shoehorn Devin Dubnyk in there when he's the 3rd or 4th or possibly 5th best goalie, and probably more like 4th or 5th or maybe even 6th best goalie in the Central Division. Like, I get Hellebuck's not having a good year this year, but he was 2nd for the Vezina last season. So it's like you can make the argument that he deserves to be in just as much as Dubnyk does, because he had a great year last year, and they're both having equally kind of poor years this year.
Zach Parise is part of the last man vote, which the NHL has just kind of cherry picked from the Major League Baseball All-Star game.
Yes.
Which actually this one probably is a little more relevant because there's, like 50 players on MLB All-Star rosters now, which is just absurd. But Zach Parise is part of the last man vote. Every division has a player on each team you can vote for. NHL.com/vote, I believe, is the easy link you can get to. But I would strongly recommend voting for him. because as I wrote about at the end of November, and the article is still very much relevant today, Zach Parise is having an incredible season. And I will just again highlight it here because it needs to be said that his points per game at 0.97, he's almost up to a point per game pace this season. And the season is almost halfway over. In fact, this points per game pace has gotten better since I wrote about it.
Sure.
That is the best it's ever been for Zach Parise in a Wild uniform. And it has been the best since his 2009-10 season with the Devils. That's 10 years ago.
Yeah.
His goals per game, 0.49. That's the best since 2008-09 when he had a 0.55 with the Devils. The guy just keeps producing, and it was evident very much yesterday in Ottawa's game. He was pretty much the driving force on the offense.
Yep.
And I don't know, I'm probably biased, and, I've had my, fair of cracks at Parise, but he is putting his money where his mouth is this year, essentially. And he should be in this game whatsoever, and it stinks.
Yeah.
Stinks.
No, and I wrote about this. I got a question in the mailbag about all-star rosters from our friend Tony from The Athletic, and I think that they, and we don't want to go crazy with this because you don't want to get into, like you said, baseball. It seems like they have a lot of all-stars. Their Pro Bowl is an absolute joke when it comes to how many all-stars they have. But, I mean, would it kill them to expand the all-star rosters just a little bit? Case in point, like every team, every division only has 2 defensemen. And how realistic is that? So you've got 8 defensemen in the entire league that are all-stars? 8? And, like that, if you think about it in the old context where it was one conference against each other or, North America versus the world or whatever, you've got 2 teams. That's 12 defensemen. And so now suddenly it's down to 8, and then, they've probably added an extra goalie into that just because you've got 2 per division. But I feel like the NHL could get away with adding a player or 2 to each division, and it would kind of help a little bit with these kind of snubs we're seeing, because there was a lot of guys that were snubbed. Mitch Marner was snubbed, and there's countless others like that, and then these final vote things, like they're trying to make up for it by putting people in the final vote. Well, it's just like a stupid popularity contest that doesn't actually reflect who deserves to go or not. And so you can keep doing that final vote, that's fine, but you should add, I'd say at least a defenseman to each roster, and maybe even another forward, because, this is an all-star game. You shouldn't be working these guys like it's a, Herb Brooks hockey practice or anything like that. It shouldn't be just wind sprints for these poor guys who actually did get selected to the all-star game. I
will point out that Devan Dubnyk becomes the first player in Wild history to make the all-star game 3 times.
Really? Hasn't Suter made 3?
No, he's made it 2.
Huh, okay.
There have been 10 different players elected to the All-Star game in Wild history, and just 3 of them have been elected multiple times. Marian Gaborik twice, Ryan Suter twice, Devan Dubnyk now with 3 times.
Wow.
The other prestigious names on this list, Philippe Kuba, Dwayne Roloson, Nicholas Backstrom, Brent Burns, Martin Havlat, Mikko Koivu, and then Eric Stahl last year.
Havlat was an all-star the one season he was here?
Yeah, imagine that.
Weird.
Those 2 magical seasons of Martin Havlat and Todd Richards we were blessed with.
Yeah.
But those are the all-stars in the history of the Minnesota Wild, and Devan Dubnyk is a first-time, 3-time.
And I don't think anybody had really any issues with the last 2 that he was elected to. I mean, he was having good seasons.
It's a makeup selection from the one year that he didn't get to go. But
I think it's more of a timing thing too, because it's like, well, I mean, he did just come off a pretty horrible stretch, and like we said, in late November, early December, it looked pretty bad. And
did whoever was selecting the All-Star game roster watch the Wild specifically in October? Like, oh, Devan Dubnyk was amazing. He's an easy choice here, without even consulting the numbers.
They made their decision before, like November 10th or something like that.
Yeah, he was penned in on November 1st. Ooh, boy, I hate to break it to you. But, I would be remiss if we didn't mention our friends at Evolving Wild, who are heavily campaigning the Jared Spurgeon for All-Star Game campaign. And you know what? I agree with them. I have been really big on Parise this year, but Jared Spurgeon, when you think about it too, is a very deserving candidate, and it just nobody really seems to give a hoot about Jared Spurgeon outside of Minnesota, and he doesn't have the most flashy numbers, but you just watch him day in and day out like we do, and you just see how good he is, and it's like at some point somebody's got to give this guy his recognition.
Yeah, and he's an analytics darling, and so that can kind of sway people in either direction depending on where you stand on that stuff. But yeah, I mean, you watch him and you see how consistent he is, and how you basically never see him make a whole lot of mistakes. And he's kind of like, he's very Suter-like in that regard, where he doesn't really screw up much, and he does contribute a little bit to offense, not a ton. He's not Matt Dumba, but yeah, he's really underrated nationally, I think, and even he's probably underrated a little bit around here. I mean, especially for folks who don't educate themselves a ton and don't read a lot and don't research much. He's probably not as appreciated here as he should be.
Speaking of not research, I have this guy in my mentions right now blasting me and Russo because Ryan Suter wasn't on the ice for the one of the Senators' goals. He wasn't on the ice, but he was still blaming Suter, and then he blamed him for taking a bad line change. It was the one where it was essentially the backdoor goal where both defensemen were on the far side and the puck got over, and Suter wasn't on the ice, but the guy's still blaming Suter.
Well, I mean, might have been.
Anyway, speaking of no research, that can do it for our All-Star talk, and we can quickly move this show along over to our Bruce Boudreau quote of the week.
Hi, this is Bruce Boudreau. I don't see how in Toronto that they're calling it, unless it's a guy they just pulled in off the street that hasn't seen hockey before. If I were the fans, I'd be booing even more, because that, they pay good money for this. If you want it, don't just think you want it. Go out and f***ing want it.
And the Bruce Boudreau quote of the week this week is, we've got a couple here, because essentially prior to the Toronto game on Wednesday, Michael Russo of The Athletic had a very good article with Bruce Boudreau and his mom, Teresa, which obviously got a lot of attention because we can all gather from that article where Bruce gets his wits from. Like sure. It comes from his mother. Let's be honest. And so the first quote that I will offer here in the quote of the week will actually be from his mom, who was asking Bruce during this interview with the Minnesota Wild beat writer. She says, quote, "Are you going to win?" Asking her son bluntly before dinner. Quote, "Because I'm a bit both nervous and excited. If you lose too much, I'm leaving. I'm not sticking around." And this is after it was pointed out that Teresa had a vendetta against the Maple Leafs for cutting Bruce way back when he played.
Really?
And then it also, in the article, pointed out that if the Wild go down early in the game, she'll just turn it off. Like the game against Winnipeg on Black Friday that they won, she turned it off and she didn't know the result till the next day. So she's notorious for, if the Wild have a bad start, she turns the game off because she doesn't watch anymore.
Oh, God. How many times they allowed the first goal this season? She must have turned a lot of games off.
So this is a fantastic article. I highly implore you to give that a look if you haven't yet, because it's just a lot of witty remarks in here across the board, and then we saw her pretty featured heavily throughout the game, and I wonder how close she was to leaving that game at
2-0.
At Maple Leaf Gardens on Thursday, because they were down 2-0. Like if they go down 3-0, she probably does leave. That's my guess. And as I said, they had plenty of chances to make it 3-0, but they came back and won. And I think that was the first time she had seen a game live with Bruce behind the bench. But anyway, that was a fun little quote from her. And then there was a new quote here from Bruce just today, Sunday. This is from Brian Murphy of the Pioneer Press. Bruce appears to be putting together a couple of couple of phrases here as I get some words crossed up, but he says, we got to put a good run together to ever feel comfortable, or it's going to be knee-scratching games for the last 40 or 42 or whatever we have left.
What?
Never heard of knee scratching?
I immediately went inappropriate with that reference, but I don't know what he's going for there.
I don't either, but it's unique enough to where we have to include it in the segment.
Yeah, I mean, if he's going to just make up new phrases, I guess that's worth being covered.
Yeah, no, and that's Bruce for you. So yeah, so there you go. There's your Bruce Boudreau quote of the week. And we fire on over to our Kirill Kaprizov watch and other prospect watch.
Yeah.
Kaprizov across for Gusev. Kaprizov shoots. He scores! He scores! The Russians are golden in South Korea.
Kirill Kaprizov, the Russian winger that we all just drool over in the hopes of getting over here into the NHL with the Minnesota Wild on the season. Just played in a couple games here in the last week. For the season total, 40 games, 19 goals, 10 assists, 29 points. I don't think he had any goals or assists here in the last week.
No, he played one game with no points.
That was it?
Yep. He was at 39 games last week, 29 points. So he's at 40 games. So I don't know. He's on a team, CSKA Moscow. I don't know exactly what the deal is. Well, it might be. But I know it happened a lot last year, too, where he just sat out games. And that team is so stacked in the
Devin Dubnyk on line one, wondering what sitting out a game means.
In the slightly, possibly corrupt KHL, that team is so stacked that they literally just bench their best players on any given night just to give them a night off on the town or something. And so we saw that a lot from him last year. He didn't play in every single game, but he was totally healthy all season long as far as we knew. So, I think he just played one game, no points, but still having a good year. Obviously, we'll see if he can kind of, I feel like he slumped a little bit in the last month or so. He hasn't put up a ton of points. He was over a point per game for a little while there, and now he's significantly under. So we'll see if he can turn that around later in the season here.
Do you have another prospect you wish to highlight this week?
So along the lines of all-star teams, the AHL also named their all-stars. And we've talked about him earlier in the season, but Kaapo Kähkönen was named an AHL all-star. He had really otherworldly numbers about a month ago, and they have come back down a little bit.
And Cal O'Reilly.
Yep, and Cal O'Reilly, who's not really a prospect. I mean, he's my age.
Just saying for factual purposes.
Yeah, no, but I mean, he's having a good season too. I mean, I believe he's around a point per game in the AHL right now. But Kähkönen is sporting a .922 save percentage, 2.28 goals against average. Really, kind of him and Andrew Hammond are doing a great job for that Iowa team that has been kind of starved for really good goaltending for probably a while now. But congrats to him on that. That's really cool that it's his first season in North America and he's already an all-star. So it's very interesting. I don't think a lot of us had very high hopes for Kaapo Kähkönen. He wasn't putting up the kind of silly video game numbers over in Europe that you would hope a guy would translate over to the NHL. But he's really kind of come along nicely, and he's done a good job in Iowa so far, and he's still fairly young. I think he's 23, 24 years old. And so, it'd be nice to see him turn into something, at very worst. I mean, it'd be nice for him to turn into, an above average backup as we talked about, in mass with the Stalock conversation, but it'd be good if he could turn into something like that for us.
The Iowa Wild first place in the Central Division in the AHL with 47 points this season. Their goals allowed this season, led by Kaapo Kähkönen and Andrew Hammond at 96th, just fourth best in the AHL. Would highly implore you to get on down and check out an Iowa Wild game. Very entertaining and very fun experience, as I've alluded to in the past here with some coverage that I've done on the Iowa Wild. So do check them out if you are considering a trip down I-35. But anyway, we can move right along here to our Central Intelligence.
Central Intelligence.
Yeah, I've been scoreboard watching since opening night. So I don't know if that counts or anything, but I think hockey players are hockey players, and they want to see where they are, and they know how close everything is. They know that every game is vital.
Had been our Central Intelligence report. Hopefully it's a little more chipper than what it was last week because, good Lord, everyone was just playing like Jake Allen.
Ass.
Correct. Nashville Predators still holding strong in the divisional lead with 53 points. The Winnipeg Jets, 52 points here as they coming off a bad 4-0 loss at Pittsburgh on Friday night. The Dallas Stars have moved up into third in the Central Division with 48 points. They had a big 2-1 win over the Washington Capitals on Friday night. Don't tell me that Jim Lights lit a fire under the hockey team. Can't wait for those think pieces to start coming out.
Oh, yeah, they're coming.
And then the Colorado Avalanche, who have still won 7 out of 10. They are tied with 48 points, but they've lost the tiebreaker, so they're in fourth. Minnesota Wild at 43 points. They're starting to slip behind Dallas here a little bit, and that's starting to become a little bit of a concern if you're into the scoreboard watching here. But the Wild, they've now won 2 games in a row, obviously, but they really have to start putting together wins upon wins to
They do have 2
right the ship.
2 games in hand on both the Avalanche and the Stars, so
Right.
that helps.
But you still don't want to be that far behind.
No, agreed.
Then you have the Chicago Blackhawks, 37, and the St. Louis Blues, 36 in the Central Division. To check the wild card standings here, Minnesota Wild are trailing the Anaheim Ducks 45 points just by a pair of points here with 2 games in hand. And the Vancouver Canucks are just a point ahead of the Minnesota Wild, 44 points.
5 games in hand.
Yeah, 5 games in hand.
Holy
and,
crap.
Big blow to the Canucks. Elias Pettersson is out with an MCL sprain, so they might slide down the standings a little bit. The Edmonton Oilers, the Wild have jumped over them here as they continue to play like absolute trash. They have lost 8 out of 10, and we thought maybe Ken Hitchcock got the ship righted. Nope.
Not so much.
Not so much. The Oilers also losing Saturday night 4-0 to the Kings on 90s night, which brought the Fox tracks back.
Did they actually use it during the game?
Glowing puck.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, I got to see this. I was out and about last night, so I
go back and watch.
All right.
I'm disappointed though in their 90s night they didn't feature a prominent jersey from that era, which
they didn't?
No.
What? Why?
Because they already have their one alternate for the year, that gray garbage thing.
Ugh.
We're going to come back to that.
Yeah.
In un momento. But that can do it for the Central Intelligence, and we very last but very not least are moving right along to our Jersey segment.
Here to start the third period. What team is this? It's not Team USA. Oh, yes, it is. They've got on new uniforms. They're wearing the logo of the Duck. I've never seen this before.
All right, Ben. We are back for our famed Jersey segment, and we're trying something new this week. We're doing it via video as well.
Wow.
So if you are listening to this Otherwise Fine podcast on whatever platform you listen to on, swing on over to our YouTube channel. Go to YouTube, search Giles and the Goalie, and we're going to post this Otherwise Fine video there for you as well. But essentially, what we have for you today is to debut our attempt at video segmenting our Jersey segment. We are going to give you our Mount Rushmore of hockey jerseys, something we have never actually done ourselves. We've asked many of our guests what their feelings are on their Mount Rushmore. We've never put together our own. Because
it's really hard.
Right. We've essentially always just talked about different jerseys. We said how much we've loved one particular jersey over another, but nothing ever in a sense that we've put our own Mount Rushmore together. So we've done the research literally all week for you, because when we started talking about putting our Mount Rushmore together, we did this on Tuesday and we're recording on Sunday. So we've spent many days in the wilderness putting our drafts together. Many papers have been thrown into the fire trying to craft our Mount Rushmores, but we have come together and we've put our list together for you. So without further ado, we're going to get it going here. Ben, do you want to start with your first jersey on your Mount Rushmore?
Sure. I'll go with the jersey that I'm wearing today. I'll go with the red Montreal Canadiens jersey, the classic version that they wore for many, many years through the 70s, 80s, 90s. It's kind of, an iconic jersey in a lot of ways. It's been around for a long time in similar kind of design. The horizontal stripe through the jersey, I think, is something that they, maybe not necessarily innovated, but it's something that they certainly have popularized. And when you think of at least a hockey team with a stripe going through the center, you think of the Canadiens. And the Florida Panthers have now mimicked it. The Wild have now
Florida
mimicked
HC.
it. Yeah, Florida HC has mimicked it. But it's a classic jersey. It's an absolute classic. It's something that's been on for a long time and still looks good. They've managed to make, being a Canadian team, making red, white, and blue somehow look Canadian, which is kind of impressive on its own right. So that's what I'm going with, honoring the classic of all classics with my first jersey.
Okay, that's fair. As a child of the 90s, I'm going to lead off with the jersey and hat that I'm wearing. And that's no surprise to any of our most loyal listeners, but I'm going with the Anaheim Mighty Ducks, their original white jersey that I have on, if you really want to see that. But it's just great. I can't put words into how great it really is, and it gives me the nostalgic feels. It's such a good look, and it probably had to do with the fact that Gordon Bombay made it famous.
Well, I think for you and I both, it means a lot to us. Just being the kids in the 90s and watching those movies. But also, I tend to think, and there's some people that disagree, sure, but I think objectively, I think the crest logo is really good. I honestly do. I think they did a really nice job of, making a duck look like a hockey player and kind of tying that all in, even though it was, this whole Disney production. I think they did a good job.
Could you imagine if they had used the webfoot garbage that they do now for the movie?
I was just thinking about that. Like, I really like John Gibson, and John Gibson is a really good goaltender, but I just can't possibly bring myself to buy his jersey because their jerseys are so putrid. I just couldn't possibly do it. Like, even, and I don't like their anniversary one as much as you do, but I really would like them to make, just an all black jersey with the Mighty Duck logo or something to that effect, so I can buy a John Gibson jersey.
What's your second jersey on the list?
Okay, so my second jersey, I'll also go to the original 6, and I'll also go with the color red. I'm going to go with the Chicago Blackhawks. And that probably isn't popular in this particular market, but I think that even objectively, anybody can agree that logo is just absolutely beautiful. Like that logo is really what makes that jersey. I think they do a good job on the striping and that shoulder patch, I think, is really nice as well. Good. It's a very good shoulder patch. But that Indian head logo is just absolutely beautiful. I spent, back before the Wild came, I was a Blackhawks fan, and in my youth, in the in-between time between the Stars and the Wild, and I taught myself how to draw that logo, and I can't tell you how many times I've drawn it. And it's very hard. It's very intricate, and it was a very big challenge to 10-year-old Ben sitting on the floor of his grandma's basement, watching hockey and drawing logos. But I think it's something that's really stood the test of time, similar to the Canadiens jersey.
I picked something easier to draw, like the Boston Bruins logo, where it's just a circle with a B in it. Just saying.
I never attempted the Red Wings logo for that same reason.
Yeah, that's difficult too.
There's a lot of feathers in those wings, and it just sounds really hard.
So my next jersey on the list is something that is very near and dear to Minnesotans' hearts. It is also one that I have in my closet. I didn't feature it here with me today, but you have probably seen it before if you would check out the Giles and the Goalie podcast YouTube channel. But it is the 1981 through 1991 North Stars white jersey.
Yes.
Where it had the great crest N with the star above it, and then it had that on the shoulders as well. No different patch on the shoulders, which you never see anymore.
No.
You never see a different or the same patch on the shoulders as you do at the crest.
No.
but the Stars made that look good. And then, of course, so it was white, and then it had the green and the yellow, and then they added black trim to it, which really, I thought, tied it together. The North Stars have a very solid jersey history, period, but I thought this was the one that stands out above the rest, and this one that I love dearly. And it's so good. It's so clean, I guess, is what I'm looking for here. It just, they have the different colors, and they mesh it together well, and then you have just a little touch of black that kind of ties it together, not the full-on body of black that Norm Green introduced to crush our souls eventually. But
I was going to say, when you said they had a good storied jersey history, I was like, except for those last 2 years there, they
well, we don't count that. We don't count that. That doesn't count.
Those were not our North Stars.
No, that's just stars. Like, why did nobody raise a red flag when he just dropped the North? He just called them stars. Like,
on the jersey, yeah.
What? Okay, but so that's my number 2. And like I said, like, it's so good. Like, the North Stars just have great jerseys altogether, but that's the one that stands out for me, and that's second on my Mount Rushmore.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's your cleanup?
Well, this would be third for me.
What did I say?
Cleanup. That'd be fourth. This is a hockey podcast, Giles.
I need to get my baseball references.
Yeah, geez, the season's going to be here.
Spring
in 4
training's
months.
right around the corner.
Right. Anyway, my third jersey is going to be one, and it's very fashionable to throw back to defunct teams, but especially when they have a look this good, I think you have to honor the Hartford Whalers in their original green jerseys. When they came over from the WHA, they were the New England Whalers. Boston threw a fit, kind of understandably didn't want New England in the name. So they went to Hartford, and they went to that beautiful logo with the W and the whale tail and then the H and the negative space. Just because I said whale tail, is that, yeah? That's what it is. What am I supposed to call it, Giles?
7 years old.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Jesus. Get out of high school. But I mean, the original green, they had their mascot Pucky. They had the whale on the shoulder patch. I thought that was kind of neat. Something they did away with later, and I'm not really positive why. I mean, I guess it was kind of cartoonish and dated, but I really did like it. I thought it was very cool. I think it's kind of being maybe bastardized a little bit right now by the Carolina Hurricanes,
Literally.
but. I think it's a really cool jersey. That logo is just something that absolutely stands the test of time. I mean, the fact that we're talking about it and pining over it, this is well over 20 years now since it's been gone. It kind of tells
You're
you
gonna miss me when I'm gone.
Right, like just kind of tells you how great of a design that was, how simple, but how impactful that design was when they debuted those jerseys, and the fact that Gordie Howe made his return to the NHL wearing that jersey is very cool as well.
Another jersey that's been gone for almost 20 years now is a jersey that I know you hold this very highly as well.
Yes.
But it is the Los Angeles Kings and their Gretzky-era black jerseys.
Yes.
When Wayne Gretzky was acquired by the Los Angeles Kings in the summer of '88, they introduced a new logo, a new color scheme. They went from the form blue and gold, and they went to a black and silver, which they've now since gone back to. But these jerseys are an easy choice for me again. Mm-hmm. Like, they are so good, and again, so good on the eyes. And why the LA Kings, one, ever did away with it in the 90s and the 2000s when they tried to mesh purple and black together, and then they just their logo in the 90s sold it. But anyway, this is such a good jersey, and probably had more to do with the fact Wayne Gretzky wore it, which probably makes it more stands the test of time. And even Saturday night, the LA Kings had 90s night, and their Twitter account had the 90s logo with that great chevron logo that we hold so highly here in this podcast. But that black with the gray touch, and it just a great look, and it just does stand the test of time. And I don't even know when the Kings have done throwback nights. They've gone back to the form blue and gold, which those aren't bad either. Let's be honest, they're good jerseys, but they've never really touched on the Gretzky era jerseys.
It's weird,
which kind of makes me sad because you should at some point,
right?
Why? Have you just retired them with Gretzky and Robitaille's number in the rafters. Did I miss that in Staples Center? Like, just do me. If the Anaheim Ducks can bring back the Mighty Ducks for a night, they brought back the Wild Wing jersey for a night. Right. Just bring back the Chevron jerseys for a night.
Yeah. No, I agree. And if Eazy-E made it, wore it, it was cool. So, so I'm going to also go to a jersey that Wayne Gretzky, not made famous, but Wayne Gretzky looked very good in, and a jersey that both of us like. It's a little bit. Yes, the Blues. No, not quite. Oh. But it's a jersey that I think is probably a little bit off the radar for a lot of people in the
Burger King.
Definitely not that one. But it was a jersey that kind of I felt like embodied the good in 90s third jerseys because, that's one of our running shticks is 90s third jerseys on this program.
No.
And that's just a jersey that I felt like they did a very good job doing in the 90s. And that was obviously the New York Rangers Liberty third jersey, the navy jersey with the Statue of Liberty head, NYR on the crest there. I just thought that was such a unique way for New York to capture kind of, taking New York from another angle, basically. I mean, they always had the Rangers, their shield logo, and then the vertical name across the jersey. And just to come at it from a different way and to come up with such a great look. And I think another thing for me is as being a young goalie growing up, Mike Richter kind of, his mask really became iconic because of that jersey. And then I think they kind of developed that jersey because of his mask, basically. Really was a great look. I mean, it was really kind of a cool thing they did to represent where they were from. It's only New York, and I really like that when you can make a jersey where you see it and instantaneously you know where it's from. That I think makes for a good local tie to a jersey. That's why we like the Kachina Coyote so much. That's why we like the Hartford Whalers with the green and the blue and all that kind of seafaring stuff. It's what makes a jersey good is that kind of connection. And I think it's a little bit off the board, but I think they did a really good job with it. And that's another jersey that hasn't made any kind of comeback whatsoever, and I don't really know why.
In essence, it was like the first city edition jerseys that we've seen the NBA kind of roll out with here in the last couple years.
Yeah.
And New York Rangers really just, it's essentially the same thing. It's a city edition jersey. It looked very good comparative to the rest of the NHL at that time when they were trying to incorporate teal or a bunch of crap that nobody really wanted. But kudos to the Rangers for making that one clean. Speaking of the Rangers, the last one on my list, also the New York Rangers, but no third jerseys here, just their standard whites, which I have a very soft spot for, mainly because a certain goaltender has made them look so good here over the last decade and a half. But
he really makes anything look good, though.
He's a beautiful human being. Let's be honest. But the Rangers whites are they're so clean with the blue red trimmed Rangers going down diagonally in the front, and then just the stripes, everything. It just it's red, white, and blue. It essentially kind of how you threw out how the Montreal Canadiens made that look good. The New York Rangers have also made that look good. The red, white, and blue, and the whites really I really have a soft spot for, and I also have that jersey, which I've not brought with me here today. But really, if I had the whole set of my Mount Rushmore, I would have just brought it in anyway. But I'm just missing one out of the set, so you can't go wrong with it. And credit to the Rangers, when they introduced that early in the 90s, they've never gone away from it. They've not changed from it. Really, even with all the jersey switches to Reebok, to Adidas, they've kept with it. So kudos to them for sticking with something that is so good and so clean, and even their home jerseys as well. But they have done a great job of making sure they stick with that, even though some of their alternates in recent times maybe have been less than stellar. But the whites are always the best out of the Rangers set. So that's my Mount Rushmore. That's Ben Mount Rushmore. Ben, are you surprised that my Mount Rushmore included 3 out of the 4 jerseys being white?
A little
considering my stance on white jerseys and being the home team's uniform.
I am a little bit surprised. Personally, I'm not a big white jersey guy. I do agree the Ducks, I believe that is the better looking one is the white. The North Stars I'm kind of back and forth on, to be honest, and the Rangers I'm back and forth on, to be honest. I really do enjoy the color version of those jerseys as well. But yeah, it is a little bit surprising, especially knowing how much you don't want to see white jerseys at home, you fool.
I mean, I did watch the Dallas Cowboys last night. Do I get credit for that?
No, that doesn't count at all. They don't count towards anything.
All right. Well, anyway, that can wrap it up for this segment on this podcast. Thank you to those who followed along on the audio version of this. Again, if you want to check out the video version of the jersey segment here, we edit in all the pictures of the jerseys essentially, so you can kind of see what we're talking about as we're going along, and you can also see our ugly faces as well. So sorry for that. But to wrap up the show. You can find Ben and I again on Twitter at Ben Remington, at Giles Farrell. You can find our podcast on Twitter at GATG Wild Podcast. We write for a website called Zone Coverage, zonecoverage.com/subscribe. Use a promo code GATG20. We'll get you a whole year's subscription to the website for just a lovely $20. And then you can find this otherwise fine production on iTunes, Libsyn, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, Google Play, all that fun stuff. You do listen on iTunes. Please leave us a rating. Even if you don't have nice things to say, I don't really care. We love to have a good laugh. So
we've got better audio quality now. Yeah, stop complaining.
Yeah, this is. We actually have we have two producers today. We had to call in some second set of hired hands here to make sure
our sound quality usually is. They needed
to make sure our audio quality runs smoothly. Today we have two folks helping us out here. So thank you to them, and thank you to those who have stuck around and listened to us. And we will check back in with you next week.
Later.
It's not resiliency. You're making it sound like we're good. That's all. I'm done.